Hello YouTube, this is TerraPrice667 and we are here with our draft analysis for TGS, also known as the Greatest Showdown. So before I get into any of this, I want to go over what TGS is. So TGS is going to be a new Showdown upload league ran by my good friend OG Albina. What he wanted to do was he wanted to run a league that had a bunch of like the best like Showdown creators in it in order to like get like better quality draft content out there. So what is like known throughout the draft community is that the Wi-Fi players aren't as good as the draft players. Now there are a few Wi-Fi players who are able to compete with Showdown draft players, but like the overall average quality of player for Wi-Fi versus Showdown is a kind of a big gap. So what this is doing here is this is like introducing like higher skill level players to give like a better view of what draft is, and like I guess just like a better overall, like bring in more people to watch and show like a higher skill level, like not just for entertainment value but for like actual like teaching value. So this is what this league is for. Now why I'm in it is a completely different story, but I'm here because it still needs to be entertaining, I guess. I don't know. But I'm definitely, I would say, of the coaches here, I'm definitely probably the least qualified for second or third least. I'm definitely a bottom tier coach here, which is fine. I have no complaints with that. I'm just happy to compete and to show some stuff here. So with all that out of the way, I do want to go over my draft here. So as you can see, we have drafted in Gen 4. I mean, this is not Gen 4. In Gen 9, but my draft does look like a Gen 4 if you just look at the, like, all the mons. So getting into it though for seriousness. So starting out is they're allowing like a lot of mons, like kind of like to test things out. So stuff like Darkrai and Blaziken have been unbanned just to see how it goes. So I ended up getting Darkrai. Now this is not your father's Darkrai. This is the Darkrai of today. This is the Wet Sponge Darkrai. This is the Dark Void I got nerfed twice Darkrai. So this Darkrai is definitely not as powerful as like years past Darkrai's, and like with how power creep is gone, especially this generation, Darkrai is definitely not going to be like a 100% top tier anymore, because it's like, it still hits like, it's a glass cannon, but it's also starting to get like prepped in both speed and power alone. So it's kind of tough to just say that this is going to be the best mon in the format, but he's still going to be a powerful mon. He's still Terra banned, and I was able to grab him first because I've never used Darkrai before in the draft format. So I was very excited to get to use him. Next up, we drafted our Terramon Latios. I think Terra Latios is going to be broken. With its buff to Luster Purge now having a 50% chance to lower Spadef, it's kind of like a faster, more powerful Shaman, I would say. And I think Shaman as like a low tier Terra is really crazy as well. So having Latios as that high tier Terramon, that's just gonna bust through teams. Like it could still run like full sets like Soul Dews, Choice Specs. It could be mixed set. It gets Dragon Dance still. It still has access to recovery, even though recovery was nerfed just by PP usage. So it still has access to all those types of moves, and it can still hit like a truck. So I'm very excited to be able to get Terra Latios here. Next up, I wanted a little bit of a bulkier mon, because like my first two mons are definitely like more like special attackers. I want like a more physically attacking mon that can bring some bulk. So I ended up getting Iron Hands. Iron Hands is super powerful on the physical side. It can also still pivot out with Volt Switch. It can just be a general nuisance to a lot of teams, as almost no moves outside like a choice banded super effective Earthquake, stab Earthquake to be able to take out Iron Hands. So this thing is super powerful, able to live any hit it wants to. It gets access to a lot of cool mons. You can run a defensive body press set with Iron Defense. You can run a like physically just straight up commanding offensive set with stuff like Wild Charge. It does get Super Style Sam. I don't know if I'll ever run that because I think that's a terrible move. It's just worse high jump kick in every way. And it also gets stuff like, it still gets, you know, Drain Punch, Fake Out, that sort of thing, Wild Charge. So it's still going to hit really hard, and it's going to still take a very long time to kill. I like Volt Switch as a way to like be a slow pivot into my special attackers like Latios and Darkrai. So yeah. Next up, I wanted to get ways to like start chipping down my opponent. So get like rockers and spikers. So I ended up getting both Clefable and Skarmory here as like a Skarmable defensive core. So Skarmory being like the physical defensive tank it is, being able to get up hazards, can phase mons out with Whirlwind, can still taunt. It can be offensive if it wants to with its ability of being the weak armor set. And with Clefable, you can run both Unaware, you can run Magic Guard Clefable. Heavy Duty Boots being a huge buff for Clefable in previous gens. I do think that power creep is starting to catch up with Clefable nowadays, as it's not as like the huge bulky wall it used to be in previous generations, but it's still very powerful. And it's still no slouch either on the bulk side. So getting both Skarmory and Clefable to be those nuisance, to be those walls for the team, to get those hazards up, and just provide ways for Latios and Darkrai and Iron Hands to break that. Next, I wanted to get a spinner, as well as like a little bit of a bulkier water type, so I ended up getting Tentacruel. So what Tentacruel does is it provides the value of the spin. It can provide Scald support. It can soak up T-Spikes. It can send its own T-Spikes if it wants to. So it's just like very much like a condensed mod of like being able to do so many different things at once. Really helpful for the team of just getting rid of hazards, especially for stuff like Darkrai, who doesn't like taking a bunch of like hazard chip just for like how its defenses are already. I mean, it's not like something to sneeze at, but its defenses aren't like world beating or anything like that. So having ways to just get rid of hazards on my side to be able to keep them up from Skarm and Clefable is huge for Tentacruel. So that's what it's here for doing. Next up, I wanted a physical breaker. Like, I already had Iron Hands, but I didn't want to just like spam Iron Hands as like I guess like a physical breaker / sweeper. So I ended up getting Mamoswine. So Mamoswine getting access to Trailblaze opens it up so much more now. So the biggest issues of Mamoswines in the past is, yes, it stabs really hard to switch into, but the biggest issue was it was always like too slow. You kind of had to like force to run Scarf, or you kind of just got beat up by a lot of mons just to how many like weaknesses the ice type gives it. So the fact now that it can run Trailblaze, it doesn't need to rely on Scarf as much anymore, it can be so much tougher to deal with. It can still work like as a choice banded breaker. It can still work as a choice Scar sweeper in the back, that sort of thing. Like, it doesn't need to just run Trailblaze, but giving it Trailblaze just opens up so much more for a lot of sets that it is going to be able to run. And it's, once again, its dual stab of like ground and ice is pretty harsh for a lot of mons to handle. Usually just getting beat by like levitate mons that are able to resist the ice stab, which is like a few steel types and maybe a couple water types, so it's still like very low. Next up we have Bramblegast, and I wanted like a secondary spinner so that I don't have to be forced to run spin on Tentacruel every week. I also wanted a ghost type that can handle like force mons that like want to spin, it can like kind of stop that. And Bramblegast alone is just a huge nuisance for a lot of mons. Its bulk is a little bit deceptive. It's actually kind of bulkier than what it like leads to be, just because of its ability to use Strength Sap. I am just taking away physical attackers. It gets infiltrators, so like subs and screens aren't going to be able to stop it that easily. It is still very powerful, like Power Whip, and I don't know if it got Poltergeist or not, to be honest, but it does get like Phantom Force, or yeah, I believe it's Phantom Force, so, and Shadow Sneak, so it is still have ways to hit. Physically, it's kind of lacking on the physical move pool though, kind of lacking on the special move pool too. It's like better as like a support mon. It does get access to spikes, and so I have like a secondary spiker. Once again, secondary spinner, spin blocker. Is able to like fill a lot of roles. So next up, I was like, I had like 5 points left, and I already knew what I wanted my Terramon to be. So I was like, okay, no one else is going to take my Terramon. I want like a cheap 1-pointer. So I ended up getting Reboot. So Reboot isn't really anything great to write home about. It's just worth Cinderace in almost every single way. And so what Reboot is just like, it's baby Cinderace. It can hit hard, especially now that it has access to Flare Blitz. It doesn't have to just rely on Blaze Kick as being its like main fire stab anymore. It can still hit hard with Flare Blitz. And I do like, even with like the Libero nerf, it's still like a nice ability to have just to get stabbed with everything and just hit something hard while like switching out. It could be a choice band set, just have to run a Violite. So like Reboot is just there as like a, maybe I want to like shock my opponent, because I don't think my opponent's really going to be prepping much for Reboot, as like I don't really expect to like be Reboot being on the top of the list of things I'm going to bring every week, but it can still come and it can still shock my opponent, deal a lot of good damage, and just like since my team didn't really have a fire type to begin with, just having a nice little fire type to like break through those like grass types like being nuisance would be amazing here. And finally, I was realizing that like my big core was kind of struggling with like some steel types. Like Iron Hands can like handle some steel types, but they can always just switch out. So I wanted a mon that can actually like trap these steel types and deal a lot of good damage to them. So I actually ended up getting Terra Alolan Golem as like my like secondary Terra type of mon, as we were able to choose two as long as they fit like a, I believe it was like 25 points total with the Terra attacks as well. So I ended up getting Alolan Golem. I love it as a just like a secondary Terramon. It's cheap, 4 times resistance to flying. It's like what its biggest knockback is its speed paired up with its bad defensive typing. So being able to Terra gets rid of that bad defensive typing, and then you can like still trap the steel types, deal major damage with good moves with like Wild Charge, Earthquake, that sort of thing, Stone Edge. Like it has good offensive typing, it's just slower. So being able to be like slow and still hit hard, and like not have to worry about being a terrible type that's just gonna get wrecked by all the ground, water, and grass types out there. Like I can just Terra into a water type and not have to worry about it. I can Terra just straight into a ground type and get those boosted earthquakes as well. So, or I just be straight electric and only have 1 weakness instead of like 20 that the rock type seems to add to every mon. So I am very excited to use this as a Terramon. I've been trying to use this as a Terramon for the past like few drafts, but every single time I've tried to draft Alolan Golem, it was never on the tier list, and every time I would bring it up, they're like, oh, Alolan Golem is too powerful to let you just have it for 1 point. This mon's a 2-point mon, let's be honest. Without Terra, this mon's a 2-point mon, so them not allowing me to have Alolan Golem is really just saying that something, I don't know, but I'm excited to use it. It also gives me another way to pivot with Volt Switch. My team is kind of lacking with pivots. Its pivots are Latios, which got Flip Turn this gen for some odd reason, Iron Hands with Volt Switch, Reboot with U-Turn, and now with another Volt Switch. So a little lacking on the pivot side, but I am excited to use this team. I do think Alolan Golem can come to quite a few matchups. It's just a way to like trap steel types for the rest of my team, because once I am able to get rid of those steel types, stuff like Latios and Darkrai are really able to go through and just wreck a team. So I'm very excited just to have this mon in the back here. So yeah, that is the team. I could be going 0-8, I could be going 8-0, who knows? It's an 8-week season, we'll just have to find out. I'm just like excited to get to play all these amazing players. I've never really given the opportunity to play them. I don't really participate much in Showdown Draft Leagues, mostly because I don't care enough, I guess. Like, I don't feel like I have the time to sit down and prep, and it's just more of a nuisance for me. So I'm happy to like join this one. It feels like something that I can enjoy. It's still gonna be like a hard-working league. Like it's not gonna be really like chill or anything at all. Like how I feel like Wi-Fi draft leagues can be, is like more geared geared towards audiences. This one's definitely still going to be like very much geared towards winning. So it's going to be a fun one. Let's see how I can do. We'll find out as the season goes along. But thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you all next week. Peace.